Hello, my name is Susan. I'm 60 years old, and I'm here to share the most painful and life-changing story I've ever lived through. A story that taught me something I never wanted to learn. Sometimes the people we love the most are capable of the deepest betrayals. This is a story about a son, $20,000, and a betrayal that made me question everything I believed about family and unconditional love. Before we dive in, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel Vintage Revenge Stories. We're building a community of incredible women who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now, let's get back to the story. I should warn you, this isn't a fairy tale. It's not one of those stories where everything magically works out and everyone lives happily ever after. This is a real story, a raw and honest story about the complexities of family relationships when money and social status get involved. If you're listening to me right now, maybe you're going through something similar. Maybe you have a son or daughter acting in ways that don't feel right. Maybe you're wondering if you should help a family member financially. Or maybe you just like hearing real-life stories about family drama. Either way, I need you to prepare yourself emotionally, because what I'm about to share might shake you to your core. To truly understand this story, you need to know who I am and where I came from. I was born into a family of Italian immigrants in Boston. My parents came to the United States with almost nothing, driven by a dream of creating better opportunities for their children. I grew up watching my father work in a shoe factory and my mother sewing clothes at home to help make ends meet. When I was 22, I married Michael, a hard-working man I met at an Italian community party. Michael worked in construction and, together, we managed to buy a small house in a working-class neighborhood in Medford, Annapolis, Massachusetts. It was modest, a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house with a tiny backyard where we dreamed of watching our kids play. John was born when I was 25. From the very first moment I held him in my arms, I knew I would do absolutely anything for that boy. Michael and I had big dreams for him. We wanted him to have the opportunities we never had, to go to college, to build a career, to never have to break his back doing physical labor like his father. But when John was just 8 years old, everything changed. Michael had a terrible accident at work. A poorly built wall collapsed on him, leaving him with severe spinal injuries. He was never the same again. Months in the hospital, multiple surgeries, and yet he never fully regained mobility. The workers' compensation barely covered the medical bills. And just like that, I found myself on my own, caring for an injured husband and raising our son. That's when my life turned upside down. I had to take not one, but 2 jobs to keep us afloat. During the day, I cleaned offices in downtown Boston. At night, I cleaned another set of offices in a business complex in Cambridge. You have no idea how humiliating it can feel to work as a cleaner, not because the job is dishonorable. Honest work is never shameful, but because of the way some people treat you, like you're invisible, like you're not even human, as if you don't have dreams, feelings, or a family depending on you. I'll never forget one night. I was cleaning the office of a high-profile attorney when he walked in to grab some papers. I apologized politely and told him I'd finish up quickly. He didn't even look at me. He just turned to his assistant and said, "Why is this woman still here? I thought the cleaning was done after hours." As if I wasn't standing right there, hearing every word. But I swallowed my pride and kept working because I had one mission: to give John the education Michael and I never had. John saw everything. He knew I woke up at 5 every morning to make it to my first job by 6. He knew I dragged myself home at 10 at night, exhausted, but still found the energy to help him with his homework. I made sure to be at every parent-teacher meeting, every baseball game, even if it meant losing a few hours of pay. When he was a kid, John was sweet and grateful. He always thanked me for my sacrifices. When he turned 16 and got his first part-time job at the local grocery store, he insisted on giving me half his paycheck. "Mom," he said, "you've worked so hard for me. Now it's my turn to help." Oh, how proud I was of him back then. John was an outstanding student, always among the top in his class. Teachers constantly praised his behavior and work ethic. He had a good group of neighborhood friends, kids from families just like ours. They spent weekends playing basketball or hanging out at our house playing video games. Michael, even with his physical limitations, was very close to John. They would spend hours talking about sports, about John's future, about life. Michael always said, "John's going to be the first in the family to graduate college. He's going to achieve everything we couldn't." When John graduated high school, he earned a partial scholarship to study business administration at Northeastern University. I was over the moon. My son was going to college. It was everything Michael and I had ever dreamed of. Of course, the scholarship only covered 60% of the costs, so I had to take out student loans and work even more hours to cover the rest. For the first 2 years of college, John was still the loving son I knew. He came home every weekend, brought his laundry for me to wash, and told me all about his classes, professors, and new friends. I noticed he was being exposed to a completely different world, but I thought it was a good thing. Then, in his 3rd year, things started to change. He came home less often, and when he did, something about him felt different, more distant. He started making comments about our neighborhood, our house, and our way of life that made me uncomfortable. One day he said, "Mom, have you ever thought about moving to a nicer neighborhood?" When I asked why, he replied, "It's just that some of my college friends live in really nice places. Our house feels kind of outdated." Another time, he suggested I stop working as a cleaner and find something better. When I explained that at 55, with no college degree, my options were limited, he seemed frustrated. "But, Mom, you could at least try to get a job in an office as a receptionist or something. It would be more respectable." That word, respectable, cut me like a knife. My work had always been respectable to me. It was honest, necessary, and it kept our family afloat. But I started to realize John was ashamed of me. Things became even clearer when he started talking about his new college friends, names I'd never heard before. "You should meet Christopher, Mom. His dad owns a bunch of car dealerships." Or, "Sarah is hosting a party at her parents' place in Martha's Vineyard. Their house has 8 bedrooms." He never invited me to meet these friends. Whenever I suggested it, he made excuses. "They're busy with schoolwork," or "you wouldn't have much in common with them." Michael noticed the change, too. One night, after John went out with his new friends, Michael said, "Susan, I'm worried about our boy. He's changing, and I'm not sure it's for the better." I defended John. "Michael, he's just growing up, adapting to a new environment. It's normal for him to want to fit in." But deep down, I was worried too. And then came the hardest blow. During John's last year at Northeastern, Michael had a heart attack. Years of heavy medication, financial stress, and the frustration of being unable to work finally took their toll. He died at just 52 years old, leaving John and me alone in this world. The funeral was simple, just like our life had always been. Friends from the neighborhood came to show their support, and a few former co-workers as well. John looked genuinely sad about losing his father, but I couldn't help noticing how uncomfortable he seemed during the service, especially when the priest mentioned that Michael had been an honorable construction worker and I was a dedicated cleaning lady. After Michael's death, John grew closer to me again, at least for a while. He came home more often, helped me sort through the life insurance paperwork, which, by the way, wasn't much, and seemed to understand my loneliness a little better. It was during this difficult time that John first mentioned Emma. He had just graduated and landed a job at a small accounting firm. He seemed excited when he told me about this new girl he'd met. "Mom, I met someone really special at college. Her name is Emma." His eyes lit up in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. "She's incredibly smart. She's majoring in marketing and, well, she's unlike any girl I've ever met." "Different how?" I asked, hopeful that my son had found someone truly special. "She comes from a very successful family. Her father built a supermarket empire in Massachusetts. They have stores in Boston, Cambridge, Quincy, all over. The family is very respected in the community." There it was again, that word, respected. It was becoming clear to me that, for John, respect was tied directly to money and social status. "And she's beautiful, Mom. Very elegant, sophisticated. She speaks 3 languages, has traveled the world, knows about art and classical music. She's the kind of person who can help me grow professionally." I noticed John didn't say Emma was kind. He didn't say she was caring or that they shared the same values. He was clearly dazzled by what she represented, status and connections. For the first 6 months of their relationship, John rarely brought Emma over to visit. Whenever I asked to meet her, he would say, "It's just not the right time yet." Emma was always busy with internships, family trips, or social events. "Mom, you have to understand, Emma has a very fast-paced lifestyle. Her family is always involved in charity galas, business dinners, that kind of thing. She barely has any free time." When I finally met Emma, it wasn't because John planned it. It happened by accident. They stopped by the house quickly because John needed to pick up some documents, and I insisted on meeting the young woman who had captured my son's heart. He had no choice but to bring her inside. I remember that day like it was yesterday. Emma was stunning. Perfectly styled blonde hair, expensive clothes that clearly cost more than what I make in a month, and professionally done nails. She was polite, yes, but in a distant, formal way, like someone enduring an unpleasant social obligation. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Susan," she said, extending a flawless hand for a handshake. No hug, no genuine smile, just a cold, calculated greeting. During the 15 minutes she spent in our home, Emma was visibly uncomfortable. Her eyes darted around the room, scanning every piece of furniture, every detail of our modest home. When I offered her coffee, she politely declined, saying she had important commitments and couldn't stay long. John seemed on edge the entire time, like he was terrified Emma might say something inappropriate or that I might embarrass him in some way. When they left, I felt a weight settle on my chest. It was obvious Emma disapproved of our family, our home, our way of life. And even worse, it was painfully clear John knew it and was mortified by it. That night, John called me. "Mom, about today?" Emma was just a little surprised. She's not used to, well, a simpler environment like ours. "John, our home may be simple, but it's clean, cozy, and filled with love." "I know, Mom. I'm not criticizing. It's just that Emma comes from a different world. She's not being mean, she just doesn't really know how to relate to people from different backgrounds. My son was using elegant words to tell me Emma thought we were beneath her. For nearly a year, John continued dating Emma, but they rarely visited. Whenever I asked about her, John would change the subject or give vague answers. Slowly, I began to feel like an outsider in my own son's life. Then, last March, John came home with a nervous energy. He paced the living room before finally sitting down. "Mom, I have big news." My heart skipped a beat. "What is it, sweetheart?" "Emma and I are getting married." For a moment, joy exploded inside me. My son was getting married. He was starting his own family. But then, other feelings rushed in. Anxiety about my role in this new chapter. Worry about whether Emma would ever accept me, and an uneasy sense that John didn't seem entirely happy. "Oh, John, that's wonderful." I hugged him tightly, but I could feel the tension in his body. "When is it? Where? Tell me everything." He pulled away, his expression turning serious. "It's going to be in June. Emma's family wants a traditional, elegant ceremony. It'll be at the Old North Church in Boston, followed by a reception at the Boston Harbor Hotel." I didn't know those places, but from John's tone, I understood they were expensive and prestigious. "How many guests will there be?" "About 200, mostly Emma's family and friends, some of my co-workers, and a few important people from the business world." "What about our family? Our friends from the neighborhood?" John hesitated. "Well, Mom, it's going to be a very formal event. I'm not sure our neighbors would feel comfortable in that setting." Once again, John was telling me we weren't good enough to be part of his new life. "John, these people watched you grow up. Mrs. DeMarco helped me when you were sick with pneumonia. Mr. Santos fixed our car more times than I can count, for free. They're our family." "I know, Mom, and I'm grateful for all of that. But you have to understand, this wedding is important for my career too. There will be influential people there, potential clients, networking opportunities. I need to make a good impression. Networking opportunities. Potential clients." My son was talking about his wedding as if it were a business conference. Despite my conflicted feelings about Emma and the changes in John, I wanted to help with the wedding. After all, he was my only son, and I had spent my whole life dreaming of the day he would get married. "John, I want to help with the wedding. I know an event like this must cost a lot of money." For the first time in that conversation, John's eyes lit up. "Really, Mom, that would be amazing. I've saved a little over the years. It's not much, but it's what I can offer." For 15 years, since Michael passed, I had faithfully put aside a small part of my paycheck every month, $20, sometimes $30, depending on the bills. It wasn't much, but over time, it added up to $20,000. Those $20,000 meant far more than just money. They represented nights when I skipped meals so I could save, clothes I didn't buy, shoes I wore until they had holes in the soles, winters when I kept the heat low to save on the gas bill. They represented every sacrifice a mother makes for her child's future. My original plan was to use that money for retirement. At 60 years old, working physically demanding jobs, I knew I didn't have many working years left. But in that moment, seeing the excitement on John's face, I decided there was no better use for that money than helping my son start his new life. Mom, how much have you saved? $20,000. John went silent for a moment. I could almost see the wheels turning in his head. 20,000. That's perfect, Mom. Absolutely perfect. That's exactly the amount we've been struggling to cover. I'm just happy I can help, sweetheart. John hugged me, and for a fleeting moment, it felt like we were close again, like we used to be. Thank you, Mom. You have no idea how much this means to Emma and me, especially Emma. She's going to be so impressed that you want to contribute like this. Impressed, not grateful. Impressed. As if my help was a novelty, something Emma never expected from someone like me. The following week, I went to the bank and withdrew the entire amount in cash. My hands trembled as the teller counted the bills. It was everything I had. My security, my safety net, gone. In the name of love for my son. When I handed John the envelope, he looked genuinely emotional. Mom, this is an incredible sacrifice. I promise you, Emma and I will never forget what you're doing for us. John, this money is for you to build a happy life together. It's the best investment I could ever make. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, John kept me updated on the plans. He talked about the florist, the photographer, the reception menu. Every detail sounded more extravagant than the last. Flowers costing $3,000, a photographer charging $5,000, a wedding dress priced at $8,000. Hearing those numbers, I realized my $20,000 was only a drop in the ocean. The wedding must have cost well over $100,000. My contribution, though enormous for me, was nothing in their world. It made me wonder, if my money was so insignificant, why was John so excited when I offered? I wouldn't learn the heartbreaking truth until later. During that time, I bought my outfit for the wedding. I spent nearly $500, more than I'd ever spent on myself, on a dress, shoes, and accessories. I booked an appointment at a salon for my hair and makeup. I wanted to look perfect for my son's big day. I also started dreaming about what life would look like after the wedding. Holidays spent together, maybe grandchildren one day, maybe Emma and I would grow close over time. Oh, how naive I was. 2 days before the wedding, I decided to surprise John with a special gift, a photo album filled with pictures from his childhood, his school achievements, and our family memories. Something meaningful he could treasure forever. It was Thursday afternoon, around 3 o'clock. I used the spare key John had given me years ago for emergencies. The door was unlocked, which was strange. John was always careful about security. When I stepped inside, I heard voices from the living room. I immediately recognized Emma's voice. She was on the phone. I decided to wait quietly until she finished so I wouldn't interrupt. What I heard next shattered me. "No, Mom, she's definitely not coming to the reception," Emma said. She was talking about me. John managed to convince her it's for the best. Honestly, it would be so embarrassing to have a cleaning lady sitting at the main table. People would talk. Cleaning lady? Not John's mother. Not even my name. Just a job title. My blood ran cold, but I kept listening. I know. John told me she gave $20,000 for the wedding. How pathetic is that? 20 grand doesn't even cover the altar flowers. But at least she feels important, contributing her little crumbs. 15 years of saving, 15 years of sacrifice. And she called it crumbs. John is mortified by his family situation. He told me he's going to cut contact gradually after the honeymoon. We can't build our social life with his mother hanging around. It's embarrassing. At this point, I was shaking, but the worst was yet to come. John walked into the room. "Did you talk to your mom?" he asked. "Yeah, and she agrees your mom shouldn't be at the reception. Honestly, John, we need to talk seriously about the future. We can't have her in our lives if we want to maintain our image." And then, my heart shattered into a million pieces when I heard my own son say, "I know. I've already thought about it. After the honeymoon, I'll start distancing myself. Maybe we'll even move to another state. That would make it easier." Perfect. And what about the money she gave us? What about it? Well, 20,000 is basically nothing to our family. We could return it and say we don't need it anymore. That would make cutting ties easier. "No," John said quickly. "We're keeping it. She'll never know we used it for other things. And honestly, after all the work I put in educating her about her place, I think I deserve that compensation. Educating me about my place. Compensation for his embarrassment." Those words echoed in my head like a nightmare. I managed to leave the apartment without being seen. I drove home in complete shock, barely able to see through the tears streaming down my face. When I finally walked through my door, I collapsed into the same chair Michael used to sit in and cried harder than I'd ever cried in my life. I cried for the ingratitude. I cried for the humiliation. I cried for the betrayal. But most of all, I cried for the loss of the son I thought I knew, the loss of the bond I believed we shared. After hours of sobbing, something else began to take root inside me. Rage. Cold, calculating rage. If my son wanted to play this game, I would play too, but by my rules. I spent a sleepless night planning. By morning, I had a strategy. If John and Emma wanted to humiliate me, treat me as less than human, and take my money while plotting to cut me out of their lives, they were about to learn just how badly they underestimated a woman who had survived decades of hardship. First, I made sure I had proof. I went back to their apartment Friday morning, when I knew John would be at work and Emma might still be home. I used my phone to record through the slightly open window. I captured several minutes of Emma talking to her mother, repeating the same cruel things I'd heard before. Next, I prepared copies. I printed transcripts, placed them neatly in clear folders, and even mocked up a few official-looking legal documents. They weren't real, but they looked real enough to scare John. Finally, I picked my moment carefully. The wedding ceremony itself would be the perfect stage, public enough to make a statement, but not so public as to ruin innocent guest day, just enough to make John and Emma feel what I had felt. Powerless, humiliated, exposed. The big day arrived. I woke early and took extra care getting ready. I put on the expensive dress I'd bought, had my hair professionally styled, applied my makeup flawlessly. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. For a moment, I thought maybe I should just go, enjoy my son's wedding, and forget everything I heard. But then I remembered Emma's voice saying, "Crumbs." I remembered John's voice saying, educating her about her place. And I knew I had to follow through. I arrived at Old North Church 15 minutes early. The ceremony was stunning. Extravagant flowers, elegant decorations, a string quartet playing softly. Emma looked radiant in her $8,000 gown, and John looked handsome in his rented tuxedo. As I watched, I couldn't help but notice Emma's parents. They seemed like decent people, well-dressed, obviously wealthy, but not outwardly cruel. I wondered if they had any idea about the vile things their daughter had said about me. When the priest asked if anyone objected to the marriage, for one fleeting second I considered speaking up. But no, that would be too dramatic. My plan was quieter, more devastating. After the ceremony, as guests prepared to leave for the reception, John walked over to me. "Thanks for coming, Mom. I'm sure you understand why you can't come to the reception." "Of course, our sweetheart," I said calmly. "I understand perfectly." John looked relieved. "Great. I'll call you next week." "Actually, John," I said, reaching into my bag, "before you go, I have something for you." I handed him an envelope. A wedding gift. He opened it. Inside was a copy of the transcript and a letter from me. I watched his face shift from curiosity to confusion to absolute horror. While he was still processing, I stepped toward a small group of people nearby, Emma's relatives, including her parents. "Excuse me," I said loudly enough for several guests to hear. "I'd like to share a few words on this special day." John's eyes widened in panic. "Mom, don't!" But it was too late. As the groom's mother, I'm so proud to see my son find someone who truly matches his character. I pulled out another copy of the transcript. In fact, I think everyone here deserves to know just how generous the happy couple really is, especially when it comes to accepting financial help from people they consider pathetic, offering nothing but crumbs. I started reading aloud, word for word. The silence was deafening. Faces turned pale. Guests stared in shock. Emma's parents looked horrified. $20,000 may be crumbs to you," I continued, voice steady, "but it represented 15 years of my life, 15 years of skipped meals, worn-out shoes, freezing winters, dreaming that one day I could give my son a better future." John stepped toward me, whispering urgently, "Mom, please, stop." "No, John, you taught me about my place. Remember, well, this is my place, defending my dignity." I turned to Emma's parents. "You raised a daughter who thinks it's okay to take money from someone she despises. And my son, he's learned that loyalty has a price tag." Emma's father approached cautiously. "Mom, perhaps we should discuss this privately." "There's nothing to discuss," I said, voice calm but firm. "I just wanted everyone to know exactly who they're celebrating today." Then I reached into my bag one last time and handed John another envelope. "Oh, I almost forgot. These are for you." He looked down at the papers, confused. "What are these?" "Acknowledgement forms," I said, stating that the $20,000 was a loan, not a gift. With interest, you have 6 months to return $30,000 or you'll face legal consequences. Of course, it was a bluff. I had no legal grounds. But John didn't know that. The look on his face was priceless, pure terror. "You can't do this," he muttered. "I can. And you taught me that family means nothing compared to money and status, so let's treat this like a business transaction." With that, I turned and walked out of that church with my head held high, leaving behind stunned guests and two people whose perfect image had just crumbled. The fallout was immediate and brutal. In the days that followed, my life changed. John called me over and over, begging for forgiveness, pleading for a second chance. But it was too late. Trust, once broken, is not easily mended. Emma tried Colin once too, probably at her parents' insistence. I never answered. 2 weeks later, I got an unexpected call. It was Margaret, Emma's mother. "Susan," she said, "I need to talk to you." We met at a quiet cafe. Margaret looked tired, ashamed. "I want to apologize for my daughter's behavior," she began. "What she said about you was unacceptable." "And your son-in-law?" I asked, my voice steady. Margaret sighed. "We're rethinking a lot of things. Honestly, John's behavior shocked us just as much as Emma's. We didn't raise our daughter to be cruel or elitist. So, what now?" "We're insisting they return your money. Our family will not profit from such betrayal." A week later, a check for $20,000 arrived in the mail, along with a formal apology letter from Emma's parents. They wrote that they had personally repaid the money and were deeply disturbed by the character both of our children displayed. But the biggest twist was yet to come. 2 months after the wedding, my phone rang again. It was Emma, crying. "Susan, please, I need to talk to you." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her. Emma looked broken, thinner, her eyes swollen from crying. "My marriage is over," she said immediately. "Oh, what do you mean?" "After what happened at the wedding, my parents were furious. They confronted me about my behavior, about how I treated you. And when they learned John planned to cut me off eventually, they confronted him too." Emma wiped her tears. "John couldn't handle the pressure. He admitted he only married me for my family's money, not for love. He said he always knew I was superficial and materialistic, but it didn't matter, because so was he." My heart tightened, not for John, but for Emma. Despite everything, she was just a young woman raised in privilege, who never learned what truly matters. "Susan," she whispered, voice shaking, "I know I have no right to ask this, but could you forgive me? I know I was horrible. I don't deserve it. But I've learned so much." I looked at her, truly looked, and saw something I never expected. Sincerity, real remorse. "Emma," I said softly, "forgiveness isn't something you ask for. It's something you earn, with actions. Tell me how, please." In the months that followed, Emma did something I never imagined. She began volunteering at a women's shelter, not for image, not because anyone forced her, but because she genuinely wanted to understand what struggle felt like. She'd call me sometimes, telling me about the women she met there, their stories, their resilience. For the first time in her life, Emma was connecting with people who had nothing and learning everything. Eventually, she sold most of her designer clothes and jewelry to donate to the shelter. She even took a part-time job at a regular accounting firm, refusing financial help from her parents. As for John, I didn't hear from him for almost a year, until one day. He showed up at my door. He was unrecognizable, thin, dark circles under his eyes, clothes wrinkled. He looked like he had aged 10 years. "Mom," he said, voice cracking, "I know I don't deserve to be here." I let him in, more out of curiosity than compassion. "I've lost everything," he confessed. "My job, my apartment, my friends." The story of what happened at the wedding got around. No one wants anything to do with me. He sat in the same chair he used to sit in as a child. I know I was the worst son in the world. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I have no one else. I looked at him and felt a storm of emotions, pain, anger, but also pity. John, you betrayed me in the worst possible way. You humiliated me. You used my love against me. I know, he whispered, but you're still my son, and even after everything, you're still my son. We talked for hours. He admitted he always felt inadequate, that marrying into Emma's wealthy family was his way of escaping the life he despised, that he lost himself trying to be someone he wasn't. I'm not asking for instant forgiveness, he said. I'm asking for a chance to prove I can be better. I set conditions. He had to start therapy, get an honest job, do community service, and most importantly, rebuild our relationship with absolute honesty. Today, 2 years later, I can say both John and Emma have changed. Emma still volunteers at the shelter and is now finishing a master's degree in social work. John works as an accountant for a small firm and has completed 2 years of therapy. Our relationship is still fragile. Trust takes years to rebuild, but I see real effort from both. What did I learn from all this? That money reveals true character, that a mother's love should never come at the cost of self-respect, that sometimes the greatest betrayals come from those we love most, but sometimes those betrayals lead to real growth. I didn't fully recover my $20,000, not emotionally, but I regained something far more valuable, my dignity, my self-worth, and the unshakable truth that I will never accept crumbs of love from anyone, not even my own family. For anyone listening who's going through something similar, remember this. Money can buy many things, but never character. Your dignity is not for sale, ever. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is say no, because real strength, real love, comes from knowing your worth and never letting anyone take it away. Never let anyone make you feel ashamed of honest work. Never let anyone convince you that your love and sacrifices are just crumbs. And never, ever let anyone, not even your own children, treat you like you're disposable. Money comes and goes. Status symbols fade. But self-respect, once lost, is incredibly hard to get back. I learned that the hard way, but I learned. And now, even though my relationships with John and Emma are still complicated, I sleep peacefully at night knowing I stood up for myself when it mattered most. People sometimes ask me if I regret what I did at the wedding, if I regret calling out John and Emma in front of everyone. The answer is no, not for 1 second, because that moment, the moment I refused to be invisible, the moment I refused to quietly accept their cruelty, that moment gave me my power back. I spent so many years feeling grateful for the scraps of attention from my own son. So many years accepting less than I deserved because I was afraid of losing the little I had. But here's what I learned. When you accept mistreatment, you don't preserve relationships. You destroy them slowly, painfully, from the inside out. Real love, real family, isn't about status or money or fitting into someone else's idea of respectability. It's about loyalty, respect, and treating each other with basic human dignity. If someone can't give you that, then they don't deserve what you're offering, no matter who they are. My story doesn't have a fairy tale ending. John and I are still working on rebuilding trust. Emma has truly changed. But some scars never completely heal, and yes, I still work, though not as many hours now, because I realized retirement was always going to be a challenge, with or without those $20,000. But what I have now, what I didn't have before, is peace. Peace in knowing who I am and what I'm worth. Peace in knowing I will never accept disrespect from anyone, including my own family. And peace in knowing that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is fight back when people try to tear you down. To any mother listening who's going through something similar, who's watching her children change, who's being made to feel ashamed of her honest work, who's being treated like her love and sacrifices don't matter, please remember this. You matter. Your feelings matter. Your dignity matters. Don't sacrifice your self-respect on the altar of unconditional love. Love should lift us up, not tear us down. And if someone, anyone, is using your love against you, then it's time to reevaluate that relationship. I know it's scary. I know it's painful. Confronting the people we love most when they hurt us is one of the hardest things we'll ever do. But the alternative, living with disrespect, swallowing humiliation, accepting less than you deserve, that's not living. That's just surviving. Take it from someone who almost learned this lesson too late. You are worth more than anyone's embarrassment about you. You are worth more than someone's social climbing. You are worth more than being hidden when it's convenient and paraded around when it's useful. Your worth isn't determined by your address, your job, your bank account, or how well you fit into someone else's world. Your worth comes from your character, your integrity, your ability to love and work and sacrifice for others. And anyone who can't see that, well, that says everything about them and nothing about you. So hold your head high. Speak up. Don't settle for crumbs when you deserve the whole meal. And remember this, sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone is showing them that their behavior has consequences, even when that someone is our own child. My name is Susan. I'm 60 years old, and I will never, ever be anyone's embarrassment again. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps you find the strength to value yourself the way you truly deserve. Because at the end of the day, we teach people how to treat us, and it's never too late to start teaching better lessons. Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. And if this story made you think, hit like and subscribe for more real, powerful stories like this one, because every story is a chance to see life through new eyes.